gas can now be substituted for any types of burnable fuels such as methane, alcohol, gasoline, natural gas, propane, or even diesel fuel as shown. The acceleration control box as shown allows the hydrogen gas to be controlled in different ways on demand, utilizing variable pulsing, programmable switching of exciters, variable amplitude, even laser injection. To support the fuel gas without spark ignition, the quenching circuit is transformed into a quenching tube as illustrated. The micro-sized hollow tubes, passageways, transmit the fuel gas but restricts fuel oxidation during ignition. To aid retrofit, the quenching tube is composed of flexible plastic material. To energize the fuel cell during car operations, the variable pulse voltage frequency generator.
Generating hydrogen from water.
You can do it. You put electricity into water and it produces hydrogen oxide. It doesn't. And you can use the hydrogen to run a car. No questions whatsoever. The questions that one want to ask is the efficiency of gas. Because the problem against hydrogen cars is the cost of the hydrogen. You can buy hydrogen at a tank with it's expensive stuff to play around.
Well, on this other video, this is I was at a profiting from water conference down in Los Angeles, and I was talking this thing up because I've been trying to get this Indy thing off the ground for a year and a half, or almost more than that now. And this gentleman said that he was interested in getting involved, and he said, I'll pay the plane fare, let's go to Ohio, and I took him out. And basically, he, turns out, has apparently some toxic waste dumps and things up in Canada. Now, the technology can be used for treating toxic waste and other kinds of materials as well. So we kind of oversold him, and he decided to blow off the car thing and decided he'd rather save his business with the other thing. There's going to be more time involved in that technology being brought out. But what we have here is a demonstration of the fuel cell and more talk with just Stan, which is, shows the inventor more as being just more human. Let's see, I'm going to run this up a little bit because it's just, he's showing him the video of the car and explaining some of the things that went on with, different problems that were solved on retrofitting the automobile and getting it all patched and things like that. This man, his name is Johnny Olvesi, and he lives up in Canada.
And the second step, things that we're talking about, being calm about the atomic weapon.
Well, when you burn hydrogen, essentially you're tapping atomic fuel. If you cold fuse it, you're tapping nuclear, and the real energy, as everybody knows, is in the nuclear fusion, not in the atomic. When you burn gasoline, you get it's atomic energy. People use atomic energy to mean nuclear energy. Atomic means just chemical energy. ISI use atomic for chemical. Nuclear is when you start messing around with the nucleus, and that's.
So he was saying atomic.
But that's just chemical.
It's based on getting the atomic weight, or some of the energy from the atomic weight, or something.
The actual binding energy is what is being used in his regular fuel cell. You're splitting up. You're putting energy in to split oxygen from hydrogen, then you're burning the hydrogen. That works. Clearly, it works. There's no question about it working. And hydrogen presumably burns very cleanly, as compared with all the rubbish that you've got in a regular gasoline tank. But you have to supply that energy in the first place to separate those two things.
Well, what he's going to show you is that he's learned to do that with a very minimal energy input because of this physical phenomenon of voltage potential being able to do work.
I think, can I run this through first and then, or?
Yeah,
okay.
Sure. Where he really is at.
He's made a gross error right at the end.
Oh, how's that?
Changing the atomic structure does not affect radioactivity. It's a nuclear process. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the atomic structure. You can change radioactive material by adding electrons or do what you like to the atomic structure. It doesn't touch the nuclear. There's no way that will work.
Well, that I can't say, you
No,
know, it
this
may
is-
have been a misstatement as
Yeah,
to
it's
what
a, it's
he
a
was.
gross one. If he's saying that you can avoid radioactive waste by taking radioactive material and changing its atomic structure, it doesn't work.
No, well,
It's not on.
I don't have any physics or
No,
nucleus.
sure, but
or-
that's a
Yeah.
mistake, and it would be wrong to try and pretend to somebody that that was possible.
Yeah. Well,
It's
the
not
only,
possible.
the only understanding I have of it is that there is a way, I thought, that if you have a nuclear, a radioactive isotope, radioactive molecule, whatever that may be,
Right.
is if it can be brought into a stable state, that it would be
Well,
radioactive.
it will be brought to stable state, but that's determined by the half-life of the material, which for plutonium is like millions of years.
Well,
If it's radioactive iodine, then it's a different half-life, and it's simply a matter of time
yeah,
until it becomes stable. You can't, radioactive decay rates, as you say, you come to a stable state, so what you're after is making it decay more quickly, so it becomes to a stable state. Say a million years, would it be a normal decay rate? Do it in a day.
yeah.
Decay rates are totally impossible to change.
Well,
They're fixed.
there's a lot involved in this voltage potential, which is basically kind of a new side of all of the electrical things that are happening, and he is best to explain those things and what he really means with the possibilities and the things that
Yeah.
they're.
I think that's an
lab.
issue which is right at the end. I appreciate that.
I'm thinking for a second that maybe that's not one of the applications.
Yeah, I think.
How does the rest of it sound?
What he has, I think, without any question, is a way of producing hydrogen. Sure, that's been known for a long time. Put electricity into water, and you get hydrogen oxygen. You can burn the hydrogen, and you can get energy from that. What he has, I think, is developed a way of controlling that burn, from what I gather, very well. He can control the burn to produce the energy output. But he talks about free energy. I don't like that word either at the end, because the efficiency of the gasoline burning process in an engine is at most 50% in a diesel, 40% in a gasoline engine. In the end use, when you've gone through all the gear ratios and everything, it's about 25%. So say 50% at the maximum. If you have a Stirling engine which recycles some of the heat from the exhaust to warm the incoming gases, you can push that up a little bit more, maybe 55. I'm guessing at figures, I don't know totally, but I guess 55. So you get half of the energy out that is available. I'd want to see how much he's getting out. He's mentions putting 10 watts in electrical energy. He doesn't say what energy he's getting out. You've got to measure that.
Yeah.
You've got to prove that it's better than the 40-50% that's currently available.
Yeah.
Well, but even if it's
Notwithstanding, even if
40-50%,
notwithstanding the fact it's a
water's
much
cheaper
cleaner fuel, no question
well, and
about
water's
that.
cheaper than gasoline.
Right.
So
What he means by free energy source, I think, is what he's saying is it's pretty easy to turn a tap on
Yeah,
for 2 cents
sure.
and get a gallon of water.
Right,
As
but
opposed to
what he's
$1
got to show
plus
is
for
that
gasoline.
the energy that you get out of it is considerably a considerable fraction of the electrical energy having to put in.
Okay, well, yeah, it's back to kind of the polarization process and the efficiency involved in
It's the
that.
efficiency of the burner process and things like that.
Sure.
He demonstrates that it will burn after it's on the off time, which indeed it will. I think what I gather, he's got a capacitor in there, and the capacitor discharges slowly with time.
The
Some sort
water
of
fuel cell
resin-
is a capacitor.
Yeah, right, and that's what's happening there, and there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah,
It would
and
work fine.
one of the keys to that doing what it does in the physical sense is that water has a dielectric property.
Oh yeah, sure. There's nothing wrong with that
Yeah.
either. It's all to do with input and output energy, and as
Mhm.
Richard said earlier, efficiencies.
Well, that being data, it's very, he doesn't,
Yeah.
they can get involved in a lot of
Sure,
things with his
he's-
patents and whatnot.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, the thing that you can do, which I've done in the past, this took 2 days for this gentleman to be orientated and stuff like that, and he didn't have the considerable scientific or physical or chemical background or anything like that. He was just a man who happened to do the electrolysis experiment in college and questioned for years and years and years why they hadn't been running cars on it. Well, as you know, electrolysis takes considerable energy input and chemical input, and you have waste, and it's just not a very efficient process. What he's showing you here is that he has a very efficient process that doesn't require all of these external inputs. You're just using water and the physical force and voltage with a minimal current, minimal energy consumption.
But we know how much.
Oxygen.
But we know how much chemically it requires to split off hydrogen from oxygen. We know how much energy. That's a fixed quantity. It's fixed by the dynamics of the water molecule. It takes a certain amount of energy to take hydrogen. It's bonded to the oxygen, and you have to supply that amount of energy to split it. We know what that is. I don't know the figure, but we know what it is. It's a given figure.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to obviously supply that energy as a minimum, and then you burn that, and of course then you get the efficiency of hydrogen burning, which I guess is well known. I mean, I've seen cars with hydrogen tanks on the back, and you just feed them through, but that's hydrogen that's been liquefied and generated in some other way.
And it costs them considerable
and whatever it
amounts
costs
to make it,
to do that.
It takes considerable time and expense to have a infrastructure that's going to be able to charge those systems.
And not only that, hydrogen in its liquid form as storage is rather nasty stuff.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't want to drive a car with its tank of liquid hydrogen on the back. I worked with liquid hydrogen in the nuclear thing, and I was scared to death all the time. It just is nasty stuff in storage. Generated on demand, there's no problem.
Yeah, well,
that's what he has. I agree. He has a system of generating on demand according to the push of the gas pedal, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, beyond the efficiencies beyond that, I don't care.
That's what he's got to that will work, and I guess it's not that process has been there for a long time. It's to do with the mechanisms of controlling that burn, and I think from what I gather, he has something that can indeed do that.
Sure.
You can control that burn process.
Does patent indicate the uniqueness of the process, or that he's the first in line?
Yeah,
some other guy isn't standing off in the wings with.
Yeah, I don't know how patents work.
Well,
I don't think, in a sense, the patent doesn't guarantee the complete authenticity of the product, because the patent searches are not that deep.
In this instance, because of all the national security implications and the implications regarding controlling the technology and not having any possibility of patent blockage or technological blockage through other filings of patents, he spent most of the time and most of the battles and the things you're going to read about in the book and see in the movie is the patent battles that he went through in order to pinpoint little places where he patented this little part of the technology, this little part of the technology, so he brought the whole process together with the final claim. The key in the patenting, one of the things that nobody can ever do for 17 years is use the physical force and voltage and create a voltage intensifier circuit that will do that, which is showing what he does, because that is one of the key patent parts of the process of the hydrogen generator itself.
I think this is one of the problems where I have difficulty with his use of words as well. When one says, he talks about a voltage potential. To me, those are the same words. You either talk about a potential or a voltage. I've never heard the two words put together before to make any sense as far as physics is concerned. Voltage potential has no meaning to a physicist. A voltage does, and the potential difference does. The potential voltage is a slang for potential difference. So I see voltage potential, and I see a lot of, when I read the article, I see a lot of physics words mixed up in a way that I don't understand. There's a lot of that. Now, I know that his background is perhaps such that he operates he's not gone through the crank mill that we've all gone through and got stereotyped. That could be an explanation for that. I'd look to that. But it is worrying from a physicist's point of view to see words being used out of the regular context. And I don't understand the use of his words.
It's like waves and light and particles never mixed until photon. Then they made a new word.
He talks about magnetic materials circulating, magnetic fluids. I don't know much about magnetic fluids, but I know that most fluids are not magnetic. But it has magnetic fluids, it circulates, and when you zap them with a laser, they circulate at the speed of light, and I start worrying what's happening there, because...
well, that's another thing that is for him to describe, and I mean, like say, the general tech talk is a full day. Just to get into the details and understand the specifics. one of the things, that is something that he has also invented. He's showing with the polarization process and continuing from the process with the fuel cell, once you have the hydrogen and oxygen gases, if you continue to destabilize them in the hydrogen gas processor, you have these electrons that have bounced around and shaken
They will
themselves
enhance
loose.
the process, sure.
He purges those off. So and if you take and you purge those off, technically you're making electricity from the water as well at the same time. When you purge them off, you're going to burn them in a light bulb or run them past a positive plate and make electricity.
But you can't use that to drive it in the first place.
Oh no, I wouldn't say that you would.
Yeah.
You're just eliminating them from the process.
Yeah,
So
sure.
that you,
It's not a perpetual motion.
It's not a perpetual motion.
But you can store, I suppose you can store
You can
energy
use-
in a
you-
battery to
you,
start
You
it.
can use some byproducts for enhancing some sort of energy storage.
Right. Well, what like he's showing you in the beginning when he says you're breaking the water molecule in the millivolt range, you have your battery on your automobile. It's 120 watts and the 12 volts that are there. That is enough to keep, like he says, you have the system primed a little bit for your ignition to get it started. You have a few pounds of back pressure in the system to get it started, and the energy input is so minimal to begin the process and start breaking the water molecule that you already have a little bit of a head start on it by having your battery in your car.
Let me ask you some political questions rather than scientific ones. Sure. You've completely subscribed to the conspiracy theory of suppression of ideas. That's one mindset, but it seems to me there's been so much new technology over a period of 20 years that it's really hard to believe that there haven't been one hell of a lot of vested interests that have been trampled over. So it kind of makes it hard to subscribe to that. So, you've got a technology here, the Pentagon, according to this tape, is there some guy from the Pentagon that's aware of it? If the Pentagon's aware of it, General Motors is aware of it, Ford's aware of it.
Right.
Those guys have billions of dollars. Why hasn't it been sucked up into that mainstream?
Well, he has been offered considerable sums of money to sell it. He's been offered $500,000,000. And then he said he thought about it seriously, and then he found out the money was coming from an Arab source. And he also knows that the Arabs make $200 million a day just in the money that they get from us importing oil. He didn't see that as a good avenue for the technology to be brought out. He was offered another large sum of money to keep the technology away from the Japanese. He's had people walk into his lab and say, "I could kill you right now," and he goes, "You could go right ahead. You have 2,000 people that would continue to work by bringing this technology." The patents, there was a lot of problems in the patenting office when they realized what he had, and they said, "Wait a minute, is there going to be one man controlling all the energy source of the world for 17 years?" And after they heed and hawed, and basically there was an executive order signed by President Reagan that said, "You issue these patents to this man. He developed and discovered this technology, and it's his. And the only way it's going to come out is through his work." So, the government is behind him. He is on the government triangulation system. They know where he is within 6 inches of where he stands all the time, day or night. They have a number of satellites up, and he is just spotted basically anywhere he is on Earth. They can find him if something were to happen. He has military background. He was in the military. He was the last married man to be drafted in the Korean War. And he has some pretty dynamic stories about it. Things that they didn't want to let him out of the service. They wanted to keep him because they considered him an asset then. He has been through a number of situations in business and inventing different technologies and things that he's really learned the ropes of bringing something out like this. He has a brother that invented, he's always told him that if you ever invent any $1 million ideas, or $1 billion ideas in this case, keep them to yourself and work this way and that way on some things. Don't just walk into somebody's office and show them what you got. And his brother came up with an idea of something, I'm not sure exactly what it was again, but just what he told him not to do when he wanted to do in his technology. Mm-hmm. So Stan has really been through the ropes on bringing these things out, and right now it's all ready to go. We just finished the patenting as far as the full process patent on the hydrogen fracturing process. was issued in May 2nd, and that opened all of the doors to allow them to bring it into the public and bring it into the economy and start to put it all together.
And what's your angle and involvement? You explained it to me briefly on the phone.
Yeah, well, right now I have dealership licensing, and because I wanted to make sure I got part of that, and then I also have been, since a year and a half ago, been working to help promote the technology and bring it into the economy, and I've talked to numerous people and investors and things like that, and made people aware of what's going on, and trying to get them to, it's being so speculative and new and as outrageous as anything we're going to run into in the world. It's been pretty tough. The thing right now we do is we have an agreement to promote the technology and act as an exclusive agent in doing this Indianapolis promotion and possibly continuing on indefinitely as a promotional agent. This would be the first demonstration of the technology on an existing energy-consuming device and apparatus, and a very dynamic way of doing it, at demonstrating it on an Indianapolis car. We run the whole season, and just all of the promotional things that would come out of that, T-shirt sales and all those kind of things are to help him build plant and equipment to put the units into production, and it would also serve as the testing for debugging the system and showing the reliability and basically unveiling the real potential of the technology to the world.
I mean, is he currently trying to raise money to build plants or for?
Yeah. He's major. What he's searching out and works on, he receives letters from different people in government and things. One was that there was $3 billion available for water purification technologies. He's working on grants for that. China has $94 billion set aside for alternative energy development. He's working on things like that. He's spending more and more time with the military organizations of other countries because they're very interested in having the technology made available to them. Some of the underdeveloped economic countries that have water problems and things like that. He's spending considerable time in negotiations with them.
I guess what I'm asking you, see, I mean, you mentioned this IndyCar promotion thing. It seems to me that's you've gone an awful long way. You could drive a little car he has across the country with a bunch of articles in the paper, and if what you were trying to do was stir up publicity, you could stir up one hell of a lot of publicity. But it also seems to me that if what he's got works, there are enough intelligent people with a ton of money that he shouldn't be. He should be well past the point of looking for funds, and that's, I guess, the only thing that makes it kind of. I mean, I have absolutely no basis to evaluate the scientific aspect of it. I'm just nervous about the fact that it seems like that guy should be calling his own shots at this point as far as money. He shouldn't be out. Nobody should be out looking for money. It should be too easy to find.
Well, in the regular financial ways of incorporating and doing those traditional routes, yeah, but there's no way I'll ever incorporate because that's a way that somebody can gain control of you and your technology and everything you own. Almost all regular traditional financing arrangements have some kind of attachment where he can be either infringed upon, blocked, sued, or any number of things that are just, he can't afford the risk of breaching any of those possibilities. That's why grants and things that are just forthright without any really attachment or you say you saw the movie Tucker where the government gave him buildings and then they turned around and yanked him away from him when he was just getting this thing going.
That was in a time when it was a different time. I mean, I think the press has a different role than it had then. And like I said, I don't particularly. I mean, I think there's certain aspects of the sort of paranoid view of history that probably do make some sense, but there are plenty of them. But at the same time, it does seem like new technologies are very counter to the vested interests and find their way to the surface very quickly. So it makes you doubtful that that something new is real. I mean, obviously there are a lot of people that would be opposed to the whole concept and to the entire atomic energy and every other kind of petroleum industry and everybody else has obviously got something to lose by what this guy does.
Yeah.
But it also seems there must the funds must be easy to come by. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm just wondering.
I would the question I have, and just reading from that and listening to the video, is what is the new technology? The technology is burning hydrogen. What he developed is an efficient little carburetor for burning hydrogen. I admit to that totally.
Well, the generator.
The generator, whatever he calls it. But that's as far as I can see, that's all I can see in it.
Yeah.
I can't see anything, any new techno. The word new technology.
Well, it's comforting in a sense,
Yes,
you know, because
it's
more comforting than if it's Pons and Fleischmann
right.
saying something that nobody scientifically can even understand or believe.
That's right. He's using a conventional fuel source. He's extracting it from water, which is very adequately demonstrated, and he's developed a way of controlling it, and that's a little device called a generator, whatever you want to call it, to do that.
Sure.
I don't see anything further than that at the present time.
Yeah. Well, basically, in my experience in the research and the things that I've done and seen, and in the use of hydrogen as a fuel source, especially generated from water, that is like been the hinge pin for the last 10 years in being able to use it economically. Okay, because they're doing all these things where they're trying to figure out ways of economically even generating hydrogen, and then doing it the old traditional way of storing it in something and transporting it through something and then filling your car up with something. And so you've just eliminated all of these steps that are generally in the infrastructure that has a centralized distribution system. You're into decentralization of a distribution system, and you're at it, not at the whims of oil companies. You're not at the disposal of EPAs and all these other things that are making fossil fuels just an impossibility to use. Getting back to why a number of these things haven't been financed, the people that are capable of financing millions and millions of dollars for plant and equipment and things like that, most of those people are that you would think would be adverse to this happening or something like that. Those people are scrambling to diversify their businesses and take the money that they have and invest it in things that this is going to pay off. It takes a while to move that money back around so that they're going to be going with the flow when this thing hits, because they can't control it. All they can do is go to Stan and say, I have a plant here that's not in use. If you want me to manufacture components for water fuel cell technology, I will contract with you. I will do that under water fuel cell policies and procedures. That's all they can do. They can't buy anything. You can't buy any patents. You can't buy anything with Stan. The only thing you can do is basically what we're trying to do. You go in what's called co-op development. You go in, you put up one, you say, I want to make a water fuel cell that'll run this furnace. Here's $300,000, here's $500,000. You design the system, the prototype for production, engineer for production. We work together to, then I control the license for that product, not with controlling any of the technology, because there's so much overlap in the technology. Then basically you have the right to distribute that product. You work together, or Stan that organizes it to get it into production and get all of the parts and everything assembled, and they come to the dealer who has controls the license, and it's his responsibility to lease those units and distribute them. That's how it's very narrow, but it's very clean, and it's very practical in the sense of controlling the technology and understanding.
So from your own personal angle is to basically make some money on the periphery of the invention. You're not actually raising money to build plants. You're simply raising money because you have a license to promote something, and
well, I'm actually involved in a lot of levels.
The official water fuel cell of the 1990 Olympics.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, that is something that's kind of come about because that's the only thing there is somebody that has no other way of doing anything to do something. I'm on a number of different levels. I have other people, financial people that I've talked to, that they're not interested in I mean, you say, why hasn't anybody done it? It's kind of like somebody walking up and lighting the fuse on the rocket. Nobody wants to do it yet. And once the rocket goes off, everybody's going to be sitting there going, ready to throw their dollars on it. Now, I have a number of people that are saying, oh yeah, well, as soon as you have this, and we'll do this, and we'll do that. They kind of want to sit back and wait and see. People who want to get into manufacturing, who want to buy lots of licensing, distribution licensing, and things like that. But until something that's really credible and demonstrated to the world is, and it's not new, and it has the credibility from media exposure and true demonstration in front of the public, it'll be a lot more acceptable to people. I mean, you go and mention even hydrogen in the first place, and people go, "Oh, hydrogen." You know.
I mean, if you just drove that little dune buggy he had right there across the country without building anything else, and
Right.
you know, I mean,
Well, the key there's part of the thing on that is you can do that, and that is the backup plan if you don't get the thing in. But number one, that takes a considerable amount of time. And within all of these international things that are going on, it's less and less of a project. I mean, it would take them a month. The other thing is that he would get, lots of media exposure, but he really probably wouldn't generate any extra funds from that. If we bring a car to Indianapolis, we have from say January until May to sell, novelty items, pre-race, things like that. The water fuel cells coming, getting the country ready for this big historic event. And
Richard's idea of a little buggy is the one which would demonstrate the efficiency, because you take a fully charged car battery, 12 volts, so many ampere hours, 50 or whatever. You've got a certain amount of energy fixed in that car. Now tip so many gallons of water in. Put as much water in as you want along the way, but don't touch anything else. Now tell me how far it can go. That's what I want to see.
yeah,
That will give me a very good hold on the efficiency of the whole process.
yeah.
And you don't have that at the moment.
Well,
you may go 50 yards, 100 yards, quarter of a mile, 10 miles.
Well, he's driven it more than the government wants him to drive it already.
That's what I want
He's
to
gone
see.
out and taken it. I mean,
well,
he
they
is-
want him to drive an Indy car around for somebody.
We can run an Indy car. We can go around the track on 2.5 gallons of water, 500 miles. I mean, that's a pretty good demonstration of the efficiency of the
Yeah, no, I understand that, Jim. I'm just, I guess, I mean, you're trying to raise a certain amount of money, and some of that money's got to go into building a special car. I'm saying, from the promotional standpoint, why not just take the car he's got? I mean, you could create a big press hoopla. You could drive it across the country. It doesn't have to be in India. Matter of fact, I think driving it across the country, you could sell stuff. I mean, you can sell as much stuff. You can get as if you're talking about selling it, promoting it, and making money off the promotion. I don't see why you need to spend the dollars to create a special car to do that if you've got a vehicle. I think you just need to create the hoopla around it.
Yeah. Well, like that may be an alternative way of doing it. If
It's just like a cheaper way to get started on.
Well, part of the thing is, if we go into the racing systems, okay, we can go into low-level production, and one of the things that you do in technological development is we take this and we build this high-performance unit that is used for racing applications, that can be used for heavy-duty applications on other things, okay? We have a unit that's only needs low-level production that we can be leasing and generating capital from almost immediately from other racing teams that will pay. The sky's the limit. These people that you're talking about saving lives, because these guys are going to be able to crash a car and not have these flaming wrecks and things like that. And it's just the cutting edge of technology, which the racing is.
Can you run 500 miles without a fuel stop? It's
Sure.
They have to change tires.
Well, yeah, we have to
They change tires about 4
Change tires
times.
every so often.
minimally
Yeah.
in the Indy race we have to make 3 pit stops minimum under the rules. So we don't see that we're going to have a problem not having to do that or anything like that. Back again, I mean, you want to build something, and if we demonstrate this unit in Indianapolis as the unit that basically the same circuitry and the same hardware, with the exception of the fuel cell itself, because of the difference in the configuration for where it's going to fit in the car and things like that, is going to be offered as the same basic technology that is going to be used on your consumer automobile. You want to test and debug a system that's going to be over and above what you really want to use, because people are going to expect this thing to be running all the time. You don't want to be having calls, people at 1 o'clock in the morning driving back from Los Angeles where, oh, my fuel system's broke down. So demonstrating that reliability is going to do a lot for just kind of turning the tide and orienting people towards standing in line for these things, putting their money up ahead of time to wait the 2 years that it will take to get into full production on the consumer unit. Whereas, like say, with the racing unit, we will be expected to have that unit available to other teams within the next racing season. So we will be, and it's just kind of a slow way of modeling getting the distribution and getting some manufacturers started up and testing different manufacturers to make sure that they're going to be reliable, making sure that we're going to have the availability of all the technology for parts that we need, and then we go into the full level, the higher levels of production on the consumer unit, which, you know, is the way of testing the waters as far as all of the aspects are concerned. That we go into the
talking about, I still go back to the figures aspect of it. And obviously, I can see the reason for not producing figures. I can understand that.
Yeah, it's, you can't release it.
But if you can't release that, then the demonstration is the obvious way.
You fill it up with some water and you see how far it goes, and you have a bunch of reporters trailing it across the country that see that at night you're not
stop in and charge up the battery.
Yeah, you're not doing anything else. That is
that's what you have to demonstrate.
Sure.
I think. And that would seem to take no time at all, because if you had a Sinclair produced an electric car, it was a washing machine motor and a car battery, and its range was 40 miles. That's it. That's all you could get out of it on fairly flat terrain. You so you can work out quite easily on a flat terrain. It could be a circuit. It doesn't have to be cross country. It could just be around an Indianapolis circuit. Just use the circuit for the day, or 2 days, or something like that. But you could work out quite easily what the resistive forces are to the car: wind, air resistance. Pick a speed, 40 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour. Put your car on the track and see how far it goes. It's a day's work.
Well,
and it would show it. If you can't show it,
the car will go until it runs out of water. I mean,
well, you can fill it with water, no problem with that.
But if you can go across the country in 22.5 gallons.
Well, I haven't seen it go across the country in 22.5 gallons. I would like to be there.
Yeah.
And I'd like to be there filling it up with water on the Indianapolis racetrack. And if you could do that, it would take a day. And if that was demonstrable, then you're in business.
Well,
until that day, I don't think you are.
Yeah. Well, we want to prepare to demonstrate something better than that.
Yeah, but you've got to do it. You're going for the biggie.
Well,
I'd like to see the little one first.
Well, the little one has been running and has been demonstrated, and beyond that,
it's been demonstrated that it works.
Well,
but Sinclair demonstrated that a washing machine and a car battery works as well.
Yeah. Well, a battery runs down, and
so does yours. Well, on yours, when there's no battery, there's no power.
Well, but you are supplying the battery with regenerative power with the alternator of the car.
Sure, but it's not a perpetual motion.
No, I don't think he's saying that, but I think what Colin is saying. So even if you keep filling it up with water, as long as somebody is there to certify that it's only water, I mean that's all that it takes.
Well, right. That's what
now I'm just questioning. I know you're out trying to raise a lot of money to do a promotional thing here, and I'm questioning whether you need to raise that much, whether you can't make. I mean, now we're not talking for a second here. We've accepted the idea that this thing works. We've accepted the fact that, from what Colin says, that there's nothing revolutionary about the technology, and that it's not something that at least is a stumbling block to anyone's common sense. It seems to be basic, tried and true laws of nature. There's some question about the efficiency, because that seems to be the key to the whole thing.
Right.
That's demonstratable even if the figures aren't available.
Right.
So now what we're really questioning is this whole concept of just simply promotion. You want to make some money off the promotion and lead to the next step for something. I'm just simply questioning the concept of raising a lot of money to create a real expensive prototype race car to demonstrate something where with less money you could do something quicker that would generate as much publicity, because what we're talking about here now is not making money off of this invention directly. We're talking about making money off of a promotional stunt, and the real value of the promotional stunt is not only making money off the stunt, but a way of putting something in the public's mind as being something valid. And I think that's a lot simpler to do than pouring a lot of money into building a fancy race car. I think with the piece of equipment you've got right now, you could raise quite a fewer dollars and probably make just as many on the other end and create just as much of a splash. So I know you got this neat idea of going to Indianapolis and seeing somebody race around a track, but that's what I'm questioning. I'm not questioning anything else about the invention.
Yeah, well, I've just questioned one thing about it, and that's going back to the original concept. If you put a battery on board fully charged and fill it up with water and have an infinite capacity of water, it's going to stop eventually.
Well,
it's got a limit.
isn't it going to
something could break.
If you
recharge?
need electrical energy, yes, but you can't get as much out of the water as you're putting in.
No, isn't it
the
like
whole
I mean, like a gas-powered car. You're not putting a new battery in all of them. You're just putting more gasoline, and the fact that
Yes.
the thing is running
Sure.
is
But-
recharging the battery.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
can't-
This is a different thing. You're generating your fuel first.
Hmm.
You're not just burning the fuel.
So your
you're going to
ignition
generate
system your ignition system in this case is something that's enough to start the process going every time. So you've got to recharge a
it.
battery.
We've got to produce hydrogen from those little electrodes. You've got to keep producing hydrogen gas. And
Yeah.
that requires energy, and it requires, to produce the hydrogen gas, it requires a constant source of energy, which is not available from the burning of the gas. The burning of the gas will power the car because it goes into a regular combustion.
Okay, the burning of the gas powers the car, and the motion of the car recharges the battery. The question is the battery
Right. Is
charging
there
the battery
is
enough
there
to
a net-
start the
is
process
there-
going
is
every
there-
time?
Yeah, and my suggestion, that has,
Well, I understand
Yeah.
it's back again to voltage being a physical force that can do work without consuming a considerable amount of energy.
Very much considerable. Voltage can move charges from one place to the other, to be sure.
Well, you can lose voltage without moving any charges.
Yeah,
You know what he's showing you.
there you go.
Well, that
The voltage
is
is
described in the
electric
polarization process.
potential. Yeah, if you put a voltage on, you generate hydrogen ions, which produce hydrogen gas. I accept all of that. That's fine.
Mhm.
To say that the voltage in itself is a difference. It's a difference in potential between two areas in a liquid or a fluid or a gas
Mhm.
or whatever.
Right.
And to get energy out of that, something has to move,
Right.
either a charge or something, from one point where the voltage is high to some point where the voltage is lower.
Well, you're not. See, I'm not supposed to get into technical.
Now, I can see the line where you.
And I know where you're hung up, and it's on this conservation of energy.
Yes, it is.
Okay, now I don't know enough about physics, and I know zero about physics and the conservation of theory. All I know is that using that voltage potential, being a physical force, and being able to change the characteristics of that physical force, and the impact that it has on the water molecule.
This is where I have difficulty,
Yeah.
because voltage is not, you can't equate voltage with force. They're two different concepts.
Well, when you showed you
yeah.
on the video that he had the voltage zones, and he did no more than change their physical position, he moved them closer
Change the
together.
capacitance, so the voltage changes as you reduce the place. I
Right,
agree.
and
No
he
problem.
was not consuming any more energy. All he was doing was changing the physical parameters of the device.
But to change it,
Cause
push them
increase
together.
in- Yes,
push them together.
right,
That's where the energy's come from.
right, but you can start them there, and they're going to produce more than they would have if you started them
Oh,
here.
sure, but if you want to move them backwards and forwards all the time,
No,
because
but you won't, because you're already going to.
but you're putting energy in from yourself.
Right, but if you started there, it's going to be producing that amount of energy, okay? If you started closer than it was, it's going to be producing more. It didn't change because you moved it. It changed from this position to that position. Those yields change, okay? It's just like changing the configuration.
Oh yeah, but that's a one-way process. If you push them in, you
Right.
increase the voltage, that will change the yield. What happens when you're in?
Well,
Don't
there
start
is.
again, you've got to bring them out again and push them in again. Have you not? If you're going to do
Well,
that.
it just continues to produce gas at the level that.
Oh
you're
yeah,
in.
which
Okay.
it will do.
You had the same energy input that you had, so that's another reason that the data is not, because it
Yeah.
varies with the configuration of the device. The one that was on the back of the car that you saw, that had the red tank on it, the white thing sticking up, underneath that, there are resonant cavities, okay, they're this big, that are about that big around, okay. One of those will produce 10 times more gas than was generated in the one that you saw on the bench, with the same voltage input. It's just the configuration of that device, the configuration of the voltage zones themselves that make it efficient.
Can you start, I mean, to bring us down to real basic terms, can you start the process off of a common carbide?
Yeah.
So you can have an ignition system, you can have an
Oh, yeah,
ignition
you can have
system
an
that's
ignition
rechargeable.
Yes, that's
So that-
right. What you can't have thermodynamically is using the battery to ignite, to spark off the gas, which it does in a regular car.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you're actually using that energy to produce the hydrogen. which you're burning. It's as if you're trying to use your car battery to produce the gasoline,
Yeah.
and then burn the gasoline.
Okay, and that's what I'm
And
asking.
that's the one
if
that
you
I
can
do.
do.
That's,
Yeah.
that's what I think.
Well,
you
I
can do.
can't explain it in
But there's one sure way.
conservation.
There's
Yeah,
one
that's
way of
one
showing
way.
it.
It's just
and that's
demonstrated that nobody sees that
Well,
anything
that's
else
what-
goes into
that's
that
what
car.
That's what we're prepared to do.
Right.
But-
I'm just questioning why you need to spend
Yeah, I
the
think
money
that-
to build an Indy car when you can do it cheaper and create as much of a promotional splash
Well,
as...
I don't think we can make $250 million promoting it as a cross-country run. I think we can make
I
a
think we
considerable sum of money
But I
by
agree, I
doing
don't understand that.
because
part of
we.
it, but-
What's your...
it takes-
Another question totally
I
different.
have-
What's your background in promotional...
Well,
what-
unfortunately not.
That's okay. That mean that is an
That's
insult.
one
I mean,
thing. No,
you know,
I'm not going to say it.
everything I've ever started,
One of the
I've done well, and I didn't have any background.
That's right. You don't know where
That's fair enough.
because you
But
don't
I'm
have
just
somebody
curious.
telling you you can't do it. You know?
Yeah.
No, no,
And
I agree.
I've actually just fallen into it altogether. When I went and saw the technology demonstrated, I realized it standing to bridge this gap of controlling hydrogen and making it efficiently enough and economically enough to be able to use it in an automobile. I knew that. When I first heard you could run automobiles on hydrogen, I went, wow, that's amazing. That's the answer. And I kept researching all through my college and stayed on top of it and through a lot of roundabout ways. And by talking of hydrogen and the possibilities, I was fortunate enough to get connected up with Stan through a family connection. Right after I saw it, I went to Ohio, we demonstrated the technology, and I came back here and I said, well, gee, we got to get this thing out in front of the people, right, and show them what we can do. And I called him up and I said, well, let's put a car on the track in a quarter mile, and because I was in the drag racing 15 years earlier. And he said, well, somebody had suggested putting it on an Indy car. And I said, well, that's a real good way of getting a lot more exposure. The way we can, it's just would create more history and more of an event than, like, say, I mean, it's been suggested a number of times. People have said, well, why don't you put it on a Ford, why don't you put it on this, why don't you put it on that? And some of those car companies have gone to them and said, yeah, put it on one of our cars, we'll hide it in the trunk, But we want to be able to make a documentary showing how we did it and bringing all the people in and all the pre-race hoopla we can do. And it can really be something that can get not only the country, but the world behind the technology and hydrogen and alternative energy. And
If I could add something here, Jim, I think one of the things Stan would be very interested in is the technology that would come about through developing an Indy car would make it readily available to be put in the consumer car rather than a dune buggy.
But I think if the scientific skeptics are going to want something before money. If you're asking me as a scientist, would I put money into this project, I'd say yes, when I have seen this dune buggy run so many 100 miles on a car battery.
Yeah.
With just water being put in. When I see that, then you're in business. Now you can go to your Indy car and all your technology that goes with it. But either you have to do that.
There are some people who are gamblers,
you can gamble.
who are gamblers who don't even, who 300,000
Right.
means nothing to.
Right.
But I question whether you can build an Indy car for 300,000 bucks
Well,
anyway. So.
the 300,000 is just to build a primary unit, secondary unit, and get us through testing and this ruling thing we have to do, and maybe buy a car.
See, now you got to deal with the Indy people. You got to deal with all this
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Whereas you could skirt all that by simply, I think, Jim, one thing, I'm reasonably interested to talk to other people and all this. So this is not from with some skepticism, but enough of the gambler's kind of instinct that that maybe there's something there that's worth.
There's a lot in here, I think. I mean, the fact that you're burning a non-polluting fuel has got to be a big.
Yeah, so forget it. Even if you had a charter with a gallon of gasoline every day.
That's right. I would agree that there's something in there which is attractive. But before you can hold it up as being a really world thing, there's got to be some little steps on the way.
See, the first guy I'd bring in would be a guy some guy who promoted something totally different that made your basic pet rock hula hoop type guy. On the promotional thing, and I'd couple that with somebody like Colin, who has some sense for sort of how to certify something. Maybe you're not certifying it in the minds of the scientists, but you're certifying it in the minds of the public that this is, you know, you got the legitimate guys following this around, making sure that nothing weird is happening.
Sure.
And I don't know, I mean, the Indy thing, developing the technology for an Indy car, that's great, but I mean, it seems to me that you're trying to, you know, the idea is to make a whole bunch of money in the short run quickly off the promotional aspects. I think you need to say, what are the things, I mean, selling t-shirts, you won't make $250 million selling t-shirts.
Well,
You know, there are,
there's a lot more to it than that.
I understand, but I mean, you've got to have,
I've been laying that all out for other people too.
Yeah,
See,
yeah, I mean, you've got to have
look at you want to see the perfect example. Look what they're doing with this movie, this Batman movie.
yeah, okay.
Everybody
I'm just saying, what are the aspects, you know, what are the different things? And the way they made the money with the Batman movie was they didn't go into production on Batmobiles and Bat masks, and they licensed every little thing all the way around.
We can do that.
Yeah, you can do that. But, you know, that takes a fair amount of work. I mean, it seems to me $300,000 is basically probably what, take the existing car he's got, drive it across the country with a bunch of people watching you and filming a documentary and taking the time to go out and license people to, you know, to sell this and that. That'll eat up your $300,000 like that. Forget producing an Indy car, which is going to take you time to get certified.
How did GM do their Sunracer? Because they did a lot of publicity on that, and it was very low level publicity, but it really hit it, packed a punch. The Trans-Australia Photopod.
Well, they wouldn't. He was going to run this last race that they had, this one across the United States.
One lap? One Lap America,
I forget what they call it. There's a lot of colleges and institutions involved in it, and he submitted a proposal to run in that. And when they saw the particle generator, and that he would be able to basically have so much less batteries and so much less weight and so much less solar cells and things like that to power his car, they could let him. So fair.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So, you know, instead of being in some traditional competition, it seems, you know, I'd like to pick the brains of some people who deal in publicity, and I can think of this. I'm just saying, very simply, what if you had, you know, something that would run on a, you know, garden hose in the gas tank and run across the country? How would you promote that if you had the promotional line? Just get some ideas, because I think the $300,000 you're trying to raise is probably not even enough to just basically do. And forget building a car. And building a car is going to take you time. It's going to take, you know, doing some other technologies. It's going to take getting certified. The other thing you can do quickly.
Well, it's back to, you know, creating something that's going to be an event, for one thing, more so than just, you know, oh yeah, we're going to drive across the country.
I know.
It's not going to take building a special car. We will order cars just like everyone else from Lola. We will order engines just like everyone else. It's a retrofit system. There's very little that's changed.
Did you talk to Granatelli?
Granatelli, Vince Granatelli, unfortunately for him, was one of the first people I talked to, because a friend of mine lives right next door to him in Phoenix. And
well, Andy lives here.
Yeah, well, Vince tried to make it controversial and pretty much got himself shut out of it altogether. He didn't see the light of day or anything like that, and I had meetings with other people that are involved in Indy, and they were ready and willing to open up a lot of doors for us, and we had a number of them open for us already. They want it, basically. They see that, I mean, you know, the difference between even driving across country and saving one life in a wreck and on a racetrack, I think, has more value. Again, from the promotional end, I mean, if we drive across the country, that people are likely to forget about that after a few weeks, few months.
If you drive across the country on 3 gallon on just water, that's it.
Well, I mean, it's
taken
not,
off.
people, you know, unless it's up in front of them in the news every day.
I don't know, but I mean, I think there are people who could help stage that. I'm only saying that I think you would save money on not having to go the step of building the technology and buying the Lola car and all that stuff, and you'd save the time of, you know, whether who's going to open doors or not. I think you could stage your event you could get to the event much quicker, and you could get to the whole thing quicker. And maybe you're right. I'm only being a contrarian here because maybe, you know.
Yeah, I think.
Well, one other thing that is kind of the linchpin in doing that is when Stan brings a device out into the public, that device has to be ready to go right to patenting and right to production. Okay. Now, what we want to do is we want to build this hybrid super duper system that we can then either downgrade or use in existence that has been proven and tested and debugged under the hardest of conditions in order to immediately put that. You have to, when you go and you demonstrate a device and you bring it out into the public realm, you start a lot of things happening with your patents. Okay, if he was going to drive something across the country that was still going to be a year or 2 years away from going into production, that starts clocks ticking, that starts people in the public, that starts possibilities for patent problems. Okay, it's all real precise in this patenting stuff. I've been had it drilled into my head, let me tell you. And so you're back down to something that you build a racing system. You don't have to gear up for making 100,000 of these units a day. Okay, we go and we make an Indy system. There's only going to be 80 or 100 different things built. Okay, we can lease those things out for $20, $30, $40, $50,000 a race. We have some cash flow being generated. We're testing out our suppliers, our manufacturers. That system then Stan is finishing the design and all of the contracting and all of the elements of distribution and getting the big thing again is on the automobile unit is he has to set up the licensing network and the distribution
I'm
network.
puzzled, going back to that, I'm puzzled why, I mean, this new Australian engine, you told me about the guy that, I don't remember the guy's name again, it was a new two-cycle engine, and everybody's racing to make it a car. There's a lot of different licensing arrangements that he has with Ford and GM, and they all seem to have something, if they can get it to market, that they can do it. So it's not like they're adverse to any new technology, and I'm curious why, they certainly can license, they're licensing it, they're not buying this guy, they're not buying the technology. It seems so obvious that if that if it's a great technology, that GM, again, I wonder why are we doing this? Why isn't GM directly willing to license this for a hell of a lot of money on a basically a license basis?
Well,
what's this?
Because the unit that's going to be made for the car is going to be supplied to just about every automobile that exists. Okay, now handing that over to GM or handing it over to Ford or anything like that, they won't accept just doing that in the first place. They want to control the tech base. Okay, they want control of patents. He's negotiating with them. If they can't have it all, they basically don't want anything. Okay, so they've made their own decision.
But doesn't this remain this way? I mean, how ultimately do you get it into every car if he's unwilling to make those deals with the big automakers?
The dealers that are licensed dealers will retrofit an automobile.
So
somebody will go to a dealer, buy a car. Once they have the car in their possession.
That's not a very efficient way to bring a technology to being in common usage, to have it all based on aftermarket retrofitting.
Yes, in a sense, it really is, because what the car companies and Subaru and a number of them are already designing manifolds for retrofit, for hydrogen injector retrofit, and a lot of other things. And there's, I don't know of all of the details and the arguments for why. But all I know is that those organizations and those people had opportunities that they just couldn't put together for themselves because they wanted too much, or they weren't willing to give enough, or they just couldn't put together something. I haven't heard.
You have to understand from the outside, the other explanation could be that they looked at it and closely and it didn't make sense.
Well,
I mean, you'd have.
You could say that, yeah.
I mean,
but all I know is that they are fighting a lot of the things that they're fighting. When I look at the news and when I see I read a lot of auto magazine articles and things like that, that they're fighting the CAFE standards. Fuel efficiency.
Corporate fuel efficiency. Corporate aggregate fuel efficiency.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that I believe they're fighting that is because they don't want to sink so much more money into making efficient fuel, because every one of those guys, they're major people, have seen this hydrogen fracturing gap. They're not oblivious to what's going on. So they're just trying to save themselves money to be able to do other things in the future. The benefits to them, I mean, they are pretty obvious to me when you're running using water for fuel as opposed to oil. The price of oil is going to go down. The price of automobiles may not go down. The price of them making automobiles is probably going to go down if they have a cheaper energy source, whether they're using water fuel cells for generating their electricity and power, or they're using oil that would just generally be cheaper from the economic impacts of things the way they go. Beyond that, those are the benefits. Even the oil companies, we submitted proposals to a couple of oil companies regarding the Indy promotion, because a friend of mine, his father is the vice CEO of ARCO International, and another thing, we don't consider them a threat is because they're using probably more energy to get the oil out of the ground to do secondary recovery, because like 80% of the oil that they have is still in the ground. It's so thick they can't get it out. So
ARCO's invested heavily in solar, so
they
ARCO's solar installation out by Besserell.
Yeah. Well, my understanding was that they divested themselves of their solar subsidiary, and but it was funny because he called his father up and said, there's this new technology and it's water instead of oil and stuff like that, and it's really interesting and it looks like it's for real. And his dad said, well, if we got our hands on it, we'd just shelve it. And he said, well, that's a natural response. And then he explained to him that, well, don't forget all of this energy and all this expense we're doing on our own secondary recovery. The oil business is going to continue. You're not going to be using so much oil for energy as opposed to plastics and all of the other contact materials and things that are in use now. One of the things that we're going to be saving ourselves from is the importation of all of this oil, which is about 40% of what we use, and it makes up about a third of our trade deficit. It's another reason for bringing it out into the consumer area first and things like that, where most of the use from fossil fuels comes from generating electricity and automobile use and the pollution aspect as well. So, it's just, as far as the Indy thing is concerned, there's no guarantee that's the way it's going to happen.
Do you have a business plan or anything? Where the $300,000 is going to go? What do you do?
Basically, it lays out as it's about $150,000 to build a primary unit, $75,000 to build a secondary unit, because it's always cheaper when you're doing the second one. And then we have $50,000 left over as a pad for. We have to put an engine on a dyno and prove to the Indian officials that it's not going to be, overperforming or anything like that, and that it's going to be safe. We've got, $10,000 or $25,000 in there to pick up a car, an older car that we could do the testing on and stuff like that, to just begin to get the system built for the car. I am in negotiations with a couple of major corporations for full sponsorship. They are very interested in the site. That's another thing. The money will come. Yeah. If we go on the newspaper, or we go and do the scientific, the Pons and Flashman routine, or whatever it is, in front down here at the Biltmore, which is one of our ideas, to bring the fuel cell down here, lay it out in front of the scientific community, say, here we have water as a fuel source, we make hydrogen. I read articles in the Omni magazine and stuff lately that are just like papers that I wrote 6-7 years ago that are saying, we're going to have these big solar farms generating hydrogen because hydrogen is alternative energy sources, clean, is not polluting, is recyclable. Basically, we have it at our disposal. We kind of bridge the gap. Getting those people orientated and seeing that we kind of bridge the gap on it, they're going to go out and they'll be on the television and they'll be in the news all the time saying this is what's going on, okay? Then we go to the business community and they say, well, what are you going to do with this technology? We say, well, we have licensing, we have distribution, we have 2 products we're working on bringing out, the government's interested, there's a number of avenues there, and then we begin talking about how we're going to promote the technology, and when people say, well, now we want to see what it can do, then we go to that.
If someone's going to give you $300,000 right now, you have some package that shows you're going to have to disclose your licensing agreement that,
Well, we haven't completed drafting that, and because Stan has been unavailable since our last meeting, and he's supposed to be available within the next few weeks. All of that is subject to review, and it's all going to be very upfront. I just, as a plan, it's daily. You come out and you do, and you all pick up the phone and you try to keep things moving. Basically the plan is to get the cell for the Indy car built as quickly as possible, get it tested and get us through ruling as quickly as possible, and begin to test and keep the team active and keep the team in the news. And because another thing regarding having all that being done by other people and getting this event prepared and things like that is that it leaves Stan disposed to work on designing other systems, engineering other systems, negotiating with the major Fortune 500 companies for all of the component manufacture, for all the distribution, for all of those things. So, you know, having him tied up for a month or 2 months, finishing up the automobile unit and driving across country, and then everybody's looking for him to answer all the questions and things. We're trying to keep him, you know, not away from everybody, but he has a lot more work he still has to continue doing. Every time there's so much work in all of the patents and everything, all of it has to be done in-house in order for him to control all the data and all of the engineering and things like that are on these. So it's kind of tough for him to go out and do the promotion on it himself and be involved in that, and that's why he wants to hand it off, you know. And I've been as excited about anybody who's doing this thing. I've been pushing it for a long time and trying to get it all together, and I'm just getting closer and closer on the people that are the sponsorship people where they don't go, oh yeah, sure, what our car, hang up, you know, and the people that are capable of spending $5 million to support it and to the first season and stuff like that. And
Okay, so that's what it costs to support an Indy team for a season.
yeah, basically, sure.
Okay, so the $300,000 just a little bit of pump priming. And stuff.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
It would, if I may say something, it would seem to me that between here and Salt Lake City, we've got quite a number of remote dry lake areas where I know you can go off out there, there's nobody around, you can just drive around all you want. I would think that you might think about loading up that buggy and a couple of RVs with investors, potential investors that have money. Take them out there, call out there.
One day.
And let them, yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. Just start that baby up and run it around for a day and just let them watch.
Well,
And I mean, you could do this with secrecy. It isn't like you're going to let the world know.
well,
And you could make some skeptics, some, more like believers. And it sounds like you want to get this off the ground. You want to get some money as soon as you can and go with it. You'd protect the secrecy and all that, and you could possibly get into your indie kind of thing without too much trouble.
yeah. Well, loading the car up and taking it anywhere is something that Stan probably would never even consider. It's back to anytime you show the technology, anytime you make a representation of something as a device that's not patented, that's going to be something that's patented, you open up the door to anybody that can come along and figure out some little piece of it that isn't patented, or some little piece of it that is not quite finished, and they can throw a patent in there and cause a technological blockage on your whole system.
Okay. I must have misunderstood something along the line because I saw a big stack of patents. I assumed they had to do with the device. And I hear you saying we're ready to produce this thing and put it in the cars.
Yeah.
So what are we going to patent?
Okay. Well,
at this point,
the finished device is different from what he has. Okay. The patents are mostly circuitry patents, individual component patents, and things like that. The minute you complete a system, say you complete a system that's going to go on a Chevrolet, okay, that system is going to be patented separately from the system that goes on a Ford, only because one component is different, okay, and that's going to be your timing component that goes on in your distributor, okay. The whole thing can, like if we come along and we make one for a Chevy, and Chevy comes, or Ford comes along and copies the component on the Chevy for Ford, so that we can't make that device fit a Ford because of some blockage that they came in with, in order that they covered a part of the system, then it becomes impossible for us to put our system on their cars, because we'd be copying some of their technology. So when you show somebody something that maybe not as complete, or something that may be able to be made another way that you haven't completely patented, you're opening the door for these kind of problems. And it's, you wonder, you think, oh, why did the oil companies do this, or they didn't buy this, or all these little things. They seem like nitpicky, but if you don't nitpick on this kind of stuff, I'll tell you, Stan has been through the battles with the patents, and he knows that he has had some of the best advice in the world of people telling him what not to do in regards to keeping control of the technology and making sure that it is brought in. By breaching your own security in any of those ways, you're just taking a risk that he could lose the whole thing. And he's not ever prepared to take that risk. He would rather take the time.
Well, what's the difference between driving a car around on a dry lake with 50 millionaires watching it and driving it around the Indy track with 100,000?
Well, if he was to take the dune buggy now, the system wouldn't be ready to go. Okay, it would be demonstratable, but it wouldn't be the system that is going to be ready to be patented that will go into full production. Okay.
Yeah, but you're trying to get the money to do just that, to make the full system that's going to be ready to be patented. So, right? I mean, that's
Well,
what I hear.
the system that would be a system that would be engineered from the technology that's put on the Indy car, only from the standpoint of the reliability and it being a very hybrid tested system. Okay, where the system that he has on the dune buggy now, I mean, he has the circuitry, and many of the things are complete, timing devices and the ways of hooking it up. But you always over-test. I mean, you look at what they do with the automobiles. You over-test, you overbuild your system, because then if you have a problem in that hard-built system, well, you can imagine what would happen if you was something that was not built as well in a lower grade system. This is just an opinion of what I see it, and I don't, without having gone through the process of technological development and engineering and all these things, I mean, I just kind of take it verbatim when somebody says, you test it much harder than you'd ever expect it to get to use. Like say in the automobile companies, I mean, they do the crash tests, they slam doors for days and things like that, testing hinges and rubber grommets and things. So we're basically going to do that same thing. We're going to have a car that's going to be running just about every week in 16 or 18 races, and if there's going to be any problems with that system, not only are we going to know about them, but everybody else is going to know about them too. And we're just trying to kind of include everybody in the world in this, and people that are, it's when you go across country and it's going to be 3 or 4 weeks or something like that. Well, yeah, you're maybe going to run into some problems, but it's not going to have the attention that having a car out.
Well, I think it could have the attention if you did it right.
But you still, the bottom line, Peter, is still that it's hard pointing out. You've got to convince investors, whether you convince scientists or not, it doesn't matter, that you can take hydrogen, take water, ionize it to produce hydrogen, burn hydrogen to produce water again, because that's what it goes to when you burn it, and do that without a net input of energy. And from a physicist's point of view, I don't think it's possible. Well, this hasn't proven the technology to me.
Yeah. Well, you are. I mean, to me, when you start the system on a battery, and then you're making so much hydrogen, and then you start the engine. Well, you're going to lose some energy in that process from the extra 6 or 7 horsepower, or whatever it takes to run your alternator in the car. But your alternator takes over for your battery.
But by burning hydrogen, you can't get more energy out of burning hydrogen than you put in to break it from water to hydrogen in the first place. Second law of thermodynamics.
Right.
So you've got to put electrical energy in all the time from somewhere, and the question is, how much?
Yeah.
If it's a small amount, then and the car can go a long distance, I'm convinced. Personally, I don't think it is a small amount. I think that car will have a limited run. I think if you put that dune buggy, filled it with 2 gallons of water, or have an infinite supply of water, I don't really care, it would stop actually when the battery was flat.
Yeah. Well,
and that's what you have to convince investors. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't even try to convince you, because I'd get myself into a conversation about things that are above me. And
but you don't need to do that. You just need to put it on a track and show it.
Well, I mean,
that it wouldn't stop.
Yeah. Well, we hope to do that in a dynamic enough way that we don't have to go and do it again, and everybody's going to go and say, "Well, I already seen it."
We're proposing. I mean, you can convince 250 million people easy enough, but you got to convince the people that are going to put up the money first.
Yeah, sure.
So you got to be willing to do. You got to be willing to show that. You got to take the chance and show those people something.
Or produce the figures from the lab test. I mean, that to an engineer that would be fine. To a lay investor,
the
more dynamic would be to see the thing.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm the man that has the money to give you to do this, and there's the card, and you've shown it to me, and I don't know shit about
We don't need to.
Right. I'm going to say, here's the money, give me the keys. I'm going to take it around the block.
Right.
Well,
You know,
that's
and
kind of,
and that's pretty much it. You
Yeah.
know,
Well-
for me, it would be pretty much cut and dry. Hey,
Yeah.
you're showing me this and it exists, and I'm not a thief. I'd like to make some money out of this deal.
yeah.
Let me drive that thing for a couple hours
Well,
and see what it does.
the thing of it is if we had something that somebody could walk up and hop in and drive, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you because we'd be a lot further
Well,
along than we
you
are.
showed it to
Because-
us, though.
Yeah, but you only demonstrate for demonstration purposes, for the patenting and certification purposes. That's all that
I
was
think
ever
you've
done
patented
for.
that the system works. That you can take an onboard unit, produce hydrogen, burn it, and power the dune buggy. That's what you've patented. You haven't patented the idea that you can run on a car battery for 300 miles without recharging the battery. You've not patented that.
Well, I'd have to go back through some of
I
the
don't
other
think
patents
you've
to see if
patented that. I
that's
think
part
you've
of the...
patented the details of the very nice-looking, controlled hydrogen production. You've done that,
Oh, yeah.
and I think that works. And I have no question about that. From what I gather, it works. But I do have this again, being the devil's advocate again. I think
Yeah, sure.
what you have at the back to convince somebody is that you can get more energy out of burning hydrogen than you put into split the water into hydrogen in the first place. And that's going to be your first point when it gets to any engineer or scientist. They're going to say
Sure.
that violates the second law of thermodynamics. It
Well,
cannot work.
My only understanding of the second law of thermodynamics coming in is that's generally applied to chemical
It
processes.
applies to everything, plus the whole universe.
All right. Well,
That's the problem. I think
No,
you're going to have to convince somebody. There is going to be a net energy loss. Besides the water going in, there's a net electrical energy loss on this process. The question is, how big is it?
yeah.
If it's a 10-mile range, forget it. If it's at 50 miles, you may be in business. Commuter car. If it's 500, you've got it.
Yeah.
And that's what.
Well, what would you have to do every 500 miles?
Charge your battery.
Charge
Well,
the battery.
all I-
You
all I-
wouldn't
Externally.
you'd have to do it
Could not-
externally.
Yes, have to put external energy into it.
Yeah.
But
Well,
if
all
it was
I
50, you've got a commuter car, which that's, you know.
yeah. Well, all I
Sorry, go
understand is that once you've primed the system, you started to generated enough hydrogen with your battery sitting out by its side to begin to run your automobile, that you're going to produce electrical energy with your alternator.
Yes,
Okay?
but you've got a closed system. That you totally closed system. You have so much energy in your battery to start with, which you use to produce your hydrogen.
Sure.
Then you burn the hydrogen and use that to charge your battery. You've got a closed system, and yet there's energy being lost. I mean, despite all the frictional things which you mentioned, a few horsepower here and there, that's one thing. But,
Well-
but even if it's frictionless, you can't have a system that generates the fuel, that burns the fuel, because to get the hydrogen out of the water requires a certain amount. You've got to pull those molecules apart. Your voltage thing does it very nicely.
Sure.
But it's a fixed amount of energy. That's fixed by water. Water is a chemical material which is fixed, and we have no way of reducing that. When you burn it back to water, the most you can get back is what you put in the first place.
Well, I
Assuming everything else being
understand
perfect.
that it is a fixed amount
Yeah,
that goes in the beginning of the process.
yeah.
But I also know that by changing those physical parameters of the device, that you are making it more efficient.
You make it more efficient,
Creating
but the
more
ultimate
gas.
efficiency is where you put as much in as it takes to pull them out. Generally, you can't put less in than it takes to rip those molecules apart, otherwise they won't get ripped apart.
Well, like I say, for me, because I can't explain it in a physics. For,
Well, I'm not.
conservation
Yeah, I
energy
think with the
system.
best will in the world, I don't want to say that this does not work.
Yeah.
I have very strong reservations, but one way would convince me that it did work would be to do that little test.
Yeah.
And you seem reluctant to suggest that test might be done for a variety
Because
of
I've
reasons.
asked
You may
him
not.
20 times about bringing the car out and showing it to
Yeah,
people, and every
yeah.
time he says, "Don't ask me again," because it's not going to happen. And
Yeah.
That's
Well, what about running around a track in Columbus, Ohio, and taking people there?
well,
it doesn't have to be
he
anywhere
did
else.
that, and to show that.
Well, he did something, according to Colin, he did something a little different. He showed that a car will run on hydrogen.
Which it will.
Well,
indeed.
then
No
the
question.
hydrogen was generated in the automobile,
Right.
and
That will work. It's a matter of for how long that will work.
Well-
That's my question.
the particle generator is another way of augmenting the electrical power supply of the car. Okay, he originally had.
But no matter how you add to it, you're making it more and more efficient with oil, with high tech. And I admit to that. The high tech is making it very efficient process. But the ultimate, the bottom line, has nothing to do with the technology. It's to do with how much energy you have to put into rip hydrogen apart, and how much you get back when you put it back together again. And the latter cannot exceed the former.
Well, that's what I'm told, and
It can't.
Stan also tells me that he's not breaking any laws of physics in doing this, and that once you have the system running, that just like gasoline, you put more fuel in it, it continues to run.
Sure, but
Running
gasoline
down
is very different.
batteries,
You're not.
and,
Gasoline is very different. You put a match on it and you can give off energy.
well, sure.
You don't need to keep pulling molecules apart.
Well, you know, he demonstrates there that he's pulling molecules
Oh,
apart.
I agree.
with
Oh,
millivolts.
yeah, I would agree. There's no question
And
about
that's 7 pounds of hydrogen a minute
Sure.
generated with 10 watts of electricity, which is another thing he
I
showed
agree.
you, which is less
And those
than,
are the numbers,
The
if you can
figures.
see those
Those
numbers.
are figures look
which
fine.
is less than 10% of the power that your alternator will
Oh,
generate.
I
So
would agree.
you know, it seems to me that he's showing you that
He's
if
showing
you
me
have
the
an
input energy.
alternator on a car running, on an engine that's running, you can manufacture enough hydrogen to run that engine and keep that alternator running without having an electrical power shortage.
That's where
And
he
keep the batteries.
and keep the battery
Right.
charged. That's where he is breaking
I
the
mean,
second law.
apparently that's what he's showing you. Now, I don't know how that gets into what you're talking about, because the last gentleman that I got into that had a physics background, he had a complication with that.
It's the ultimate one you
He
have
was
to convince,
allowing,
I
he
think.
was, every time I would kind of go and say, well, you have this device here that has this efficiency, and you have this device here that has this efficiency, and you put these two together, and then this device here. And he said, no, you can't do that. I said, well,
Well, I have no question with that. I think
how
you
come I
can.
can't put a device on
Of course
there
you can.
to
You
do
can.
that?
You can increase. You can increase efficiency, and I think
Yeah.
obviously you have a system which is very efficient.
Yeah.
My question is, how efficient is it? It can't be more than 100%.
Well, no, nobody.
And the question is, where is it? And I
Yeah.
still feel, from a simple physics background, the battery will flatten.
Well, I think having Stan do a tech talk, I wouldn't expect anybody to put up any large sums of money at all without having, seeing Stan and seeing the man himself and going to drink from the well, as it were. Beyond right now, I don't know how I can make anything more, generate any more interest in what you see or have to do than to go and try and set up a meeting and see Stan if you're so inclined. We're trying to set up basically a meeting which would be a pre-verification meeting to something we're going to do with the television cameras and stuff, where we're trying to put together some people from the scientific community, engineers and things like that, that would go and see the power supply demonstrated, and from that point possibly work with us in putting it in front of the television cameras and things like that. That is our plan as far as the first step. We're not going to go saying, oh, we're just going to run this thing on the track in Indianapolis and that's that. We plan to do it in the normal, acceptable, verification kind of standard format kind of way that it's done. The only person that can explain and get you past this situation with the conservation energy theory would be Stan. I have another technical manual. It's about this thick that may give you some insights into that you may.
Probably wouldn't understand.
Well, like I said, there's.
Because I think that's one of my worries. And my other worry, and again, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here, for someone from outside looking at this, an engineer who's more familiar with these kind of things than I am, they're not going to like the terminology. They're going to worry about things like voltage potentials and voltage forces. It's going to grate on them. And I think somehow he has to overcome that one as well. It may be just a presentation one, or it may be a fundamental physics one. I can't tell.
Yeah.
There's lots of things thrown in there which at face value do not make sense physically. And I think they have to if you're going to turn it over to somebody else to evaluate more.
Well, making sense doesn't mean that they're not accurate either.
I agree. You can pull out words to describe what's going on,
Yeah.
and if they work, then that's fine. It's only vocabulary after all. But I think that but when he's saying things about Coulomb's law and Newton's law, he's mixing them up a little bit. And I know it may be that in his own mind they're probably not mixed up at all. He's quite happy talking about it this way. And I think that's in fact what's happening. That anybody out in the outside community is going to grate with them, and they say, well, how can you talk about Newton as all the two different things? Why is he mixing up in this way? Is it because he's thought it all through to him it's fine, or is it he doesn't understand what he's doing?
Yeah.
And they want to know is the former rather than the latter. It's like me wiring my house. The electrician goes in there and pushes all the circuits in, and then I look at it and I see this massive wires. He doesn't label any of them. When I do it, I have to put a label on each one so I can understand what's going on. And I think that's just the difference between them. And I think that's something else you'll have to address sooner rather than later, I think.
Back to, it all generally winds up being a situation where if you have a C-stand
But you
get a full explanation from beginning to end.
But you could sweep all that under the carpet by having the car on the track.
Well,
it wouldn't matter then.
Yeah, except that there are people that think of other things that they got hang-ups with. Let me tell you.
Well, if I saw that car run for 100 miles without charging the battery on a track, I have no hang-ups whatsoever. They disappear.
Well, it's too bad he didn't video himself driving around all the nights and driving around.
That's what he should have done. And it needs to be authenticated so that he's not charging the battery secretly.
That interests me. That comment interests me a lot. The government told him to keep it under wraps. I mean,
well, the government is
this is mystery. I hear a real mystery here now. Does the CIA come in and says we're going to shoot you if you drive your car? I mean, what
Well, it's the government is in the patenting office, and see, all of this stuff just came out from national security, and he has to play ball with the people who control the patent office, which is the government, and the government has a lot of say-so in what things can, once they are patented, whether they're legitimate or otherwise, are going to be allowed into the public realm because of national security issues. They feel strongly enough that that in 1975, when we first discovered this device, that they weren't going to have him on television, have him running his car on every news channel in the world and stuff like that, until the government of the United States and the military of the United States was assured of having access to the technology and being able to put it
So like for the Channel 6 news shot that we got, he had to get permission, or they had to get permission from somebody in the federal government?
They did that. I don't know that he had to have
or
specific, dictate to be allowed to do that. There was probably something that came in under what he was working on in his patents at that time, and that might have been something that was shown that they came in after that was shown and said, don't do it anymore too.
When was that?
That was in this is 89, I believe that was 1986 or 88, could have been 85. It could have been 85, it was about 3.5 years ago. And actually, since that time, right after that was done, was when I got hooked up with them. And I had called him up. I was planning to get a meeting with him in that summer of '85, and I called him up. I didn't make connections, and I went back to Colorado and called him from there and said I was planning to come back and get hooked up with him. And he said, "Forget it. Everything's on hold for now because they discovered their patent attorney was sabotaging patents. Somebody was paying him off to sabotage the patent process and not pay fees and things like that so that he had potential loose technology." They found that out. It took them 2 years to go back through everything they had done for about the last 7 years and make sure that everything was back in order and it was all secured. And then he had to continue with the processing patents that he was working on. And all of them were he was given the grant on the hydrogen fracturing process, which basically the claims allowed that he reaches getting the atomic yield from water, which in a gallon of water is 150 million barrels of oil. And I don't know how that applies to the conservation energy theory, saying
I think that's nuclear yield, not atomic. Okay. Well, okay, this is that strict vocabulary one we had before.
Yeah.
If you can fuse a hydrogen nucleus, then a gallon of water fused would give you a significant amount of energy. I'm a little bit careful with chemical energy, which is this is a chemical process. It's not a nuclear. It's a chemical process.
He'll tell you that it's not a chemical process, that it's a physical process.
Well, putting electricity in to get hydrogen out and then burning hydrogen is a chemical process.
Well, to me, I again, it might be semantics, or it might be
Yeah.
me not knowing,
not-
having the
yeah.
terminology. To me, it's
It's not a nuclear process, that's for sure. It's
Well,
nothing to do with the nucleus of the
the
hydrogen.
beginning, well, the process continues from the hydrogen generator to keeping the molecule destabilized and breaking it down until you get the thermal energy explosive force from the nucleus and all of the component parts
That
of the
would be a
molecule.
fusion process, and you need to talk to Utah about that.
Well, to be quite honest about it, those gentlemen were not even allowed to go through his lab. Those gentlemen probably caused more damage than good in the scientific.
Yeah, it is sad from that point of view, because cold fusion is a very legitimate process. There's nothing wrong with the phenomenon of cold fusion whatsoever, and it's been researched for quite a while. They just, as you say, they kind of messed up
Yeah,
the way they handled
they went
it.
through. They came to see Stan, and Stan had a real bad feeling about them and wouldn't get in any discussions
Yeah,
with them. And wouldn't allow
they
them
made
to
a lot of
lab.
mistakes, and I think they paid for those mistakes. And what is sad is that the people will not put money into that, and perhaps we ought to be putting money into cold fusion. It's a viable process, but
Well,
it needs just more research on it.
There's
So-
a lot of research going on, and Stan
Yeah.
basically has coined and calls his process the hydrogen fracturing process.
Mhm.
It is basically, in his mind, gets you the same energy yield as a fusion reaction or fission
Can't
reaction.
do that. His fracturing means splitting it off from water. To get money, cash, energy money out of a hydrogen molecule, hydrogen atom, you have to fuse it. So
Well,
it's the only way you can do
I
it. You
know
can't
that
split.
that's,
You
I know
can't
that
split
that's
it
one
anymore.
way of doing it.
You've got to
I don't
fuse
know
it.
that there aren't any other ways.
So,
I know that it's the same with being that, people think, okay, you make hydrogen and oxygen gas, burning them back together, that's a chemical reaction, that's the only way of making them back into water. Well, that's not true, because you can run them past the cathode and the anode, which is another reaction that will make electricity and also turn it back into water. Now, measuring the difference between the thermal energy that you got from burning that, or the thermal energy that you could produce from the electricity that you made those are the kind of things that you talk about in conservation energy. Now, I don't know what the difference is, or how minute, or how large it is.
but it's got to be. But I'd have a hard time accepting nuclear energy from water, other than the fusion process.
Yeah.
There's two ways. I mean, fission process we all know about. You take a big atom and split it, that gives energy, because from the energy, when you take two from one, there's a positive energy to be had by that process. And we do that very well. So it costs most people. But the fusion one, to get two hydrogens, you can get two hydrogen atoms to join together. The energy they have in joining is less than the energy that they had separately, and the difference is to be had. But getting them together is the normal way, is heat them up, zap them with lasers, and maybe you get them to go.
Sure.
And I think Livermore are at about 80% of break even at the moment. Again, that's what they say they're at.
Sure.
It's all government control. I accept that Livermore is under tremendous wraps. But that's what they're willing to say, that they're about 80% or 90% maybe of break even. They're not at break even, but they're at 80% 20 years ago. That's the annoying thing about fusion, is that every time you say, well, here we are at 90%, we've only got 10% government at break even. So we'll change a little bit here, we'll change the plasma. It shoves you back to 80%. It's been frustrated by these little changes. And then that's why Utah was so, it presented such a possibility.
Well,
By fusing hydrogen, by getting them absorbed into a palladium matrix, which brings them together and perhaps fuses them. But they haven't been able to demonstrate that they have
even
fused.
if what they have works, is not even economical to even ever be feasible.
No.
And that's
I
the
hope
essence of.
it hasn't put the cap on cold fusion research, because I think a lot.
Well, I can assure you that it hasn't, because I talked to those people too, and when
Yeah,
I try to
it's
tell them
just
that I
sad.
have a hydrogen generator that's efficient enough to do a number of things, then they say, well, we're working on fusion. And I go, well, I'm sorry, but can you take a coffee break and talk to me for 5 minutes? So,
But I have a hard time thinking that there's any other way of getting energy out of hydrogen other than fusing it to produce deuterium, or fusing deuterium to get helium.
Or burning the hydrogen.
well,
burning the hydrogen, which is
Stan can
which is
demonstrate all of these things, and demonstrating them on a device that's going to be powered by the system is yet to come in the public realm.
Well, it's conceivable
This
that
is
a
what we're trying to
physicist,
do today.
I mean, you know, having someone directly explain someone the stuff, someone like yourself, you could maybe overcome.
I don't. It's possible. It's possible. I think the best way.
So someone who
always
can answer the
scientific-
questions and
You can answer questions, right? That's
The demonstration is usually what.
A demonstration is the one that will really show.
I have another practical question from the investor standpoint, and that's what kind of yield are you projecting for investors?
So that's again some kind of business plan that shows.
Well, I've just basically figured that I can, for $300,000, I want to return $1.5 million within 2 years. Whatever that works out to be interest rate wise or anything like that is the number that I feel.
Well, I mean, just I mean, some sort of prospectus or something that says the money's going here and the money will come from here.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Well,
And what I have to sell,
Yeah.
other than somebody else's idea, or what actual rights to the thing I have. I mean, I think you're going to have to put these things together for somebody.
Sure.
Before.
Well, I put together different sheets for different situations at different times, and so, like I say, it kind of changes from time to time. So, as far as laying out where the dollars are going to go, if it was $300,000, they went to Stan to build the units and do the testing and supply the technical expertise for the automobile all the way to the race, and then beyond that, that's just the development, and that's where those dollars go. In that interim, there's the money that would be generated from that, from having that unit and putting it on a car and doing that promotion and promoting that device and the technology and the racing. We just feel pretty confident that.
Well, a lot of people that put up money will probably care more about how the money's going to be spent, whether it's enough money and everything else, than they do about whether it works or not. Because the worst thing that could happen is the thing is a great idea, but it takes $1 million,
Sure.
and you raise $300,000, and you can't do it, and therefore they've lost all their money.
Yeah, no, Stan is good at the estimates and conservative in saying he's more inclined to overestimate than he is to underestimate and things like that as well. And part of the other reason it changes is at this point in time, the $300,000 is basically the consideration for us to secure our promotional contract and have the rights to continually promote new products that he brings out. When he brings the system for the jet out, or the system for the household or the consumer unit again, we will continue to handle those promotions. The returns on that would come from the different promotional things that happen. Being able to have new movies and documentary movies and all of the, basically the big hit on the indie thing with different novelty paraphernalia items and things like that. Like I say, we're using this movie as a phenomenon for how many. I mean, you can't look without seeing something from that these days. And they had projected that they were going to gross $250 million just on that. So we conservatively feel that we ought to be able to make about $25 million in total, and that is to be split with Stan and the people that handle the promotion of it.
You've got, I look at that from a business standpoint. You've got a real different commodity than a movie, because the movie industry is something that goes and goes and goes, and this is a tried, true, proven thing. If you do this and do that, and you sell the T-shirts, everybody's already focused in on that. That's a routine.
Yeah.
And you're taking, something that's relatively different than that, throwing it out here, and I don't see it personally. Don't see it generating that many, the kids running out for the T-shirts and all that.
Well, you tell people you're going to run a car on water, and you get a few people that see the scientific community get up there and say you have a hydrogen generator here, and it's efficient enough, and it's been demonstrated that you can run an automobile on it,
There's tons of money to be made out of the thing. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no question that it really makes sense that it's a fabulous invention. My own personal, real interest is to not have anything to do with the thing, but have you guys do this as quickly as possible so I can use it.
right. Well, that's
Number one. I mean, I don't care, and even if I have to pay a lot of money to use it, I'd be happy to use it.
right. Well, that is our goal. I mean, the sooner, it's like I say, it's the one person getting, taking what they see and seeing that the man is showing you that he can generate enough hydrogen to run a car. Outside of the conservation of energy theory, I could sit here and I could get in arguments and where I feel as a layman, how I see that conservation and energy theory or otherwise, there's enough energy being generated by that motor because it has an alternator on it that can make enough hydrogen to run it. And it comes down to the energy consumption when you make the hydrogen and oxygen and you pluck off that little electron. You know, Stan can demonstrate that he's not breaking any laws of physics and that you can run an automobile without running the battery down, and you have a device on there that doesn't consume an appreciable amount of energy to put you beyond those points.
The only way that you can demonstrate that is to physically do it.
Well,
I'll talk about it.
yeah, sure.
Because the reason that a lot of the stuff in here is not that easy to understand is because it's not written in language that I understand.
Well, sure.
Or
And there's
any
probably
other.
a reason for that too.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm sure that's
he's
true.
very,
Yeah.
secure in making sure that the technology is not copied or
Now, you said if something to happen to him tomorrow, 2,000 people would pick up the ball.
Well,
I don't know, but it sounds to me like he's the only one that could pick up the ball.
well, the technology is divested into the foundations of things. And he has a number of people that he's been working with over the last 13 years since he's had that are basically, have direction to continue the negotiations and all the things that he's doing at this point. He has been giving technical talks and demonstrations of the technology for quite a period of years. He used to go to the county fair with it, and like you said, there was a guy that was an expert in hydrogen that had never seen a hydrogen generator that had a controlled flame coming out of it. And
That's a nice part of the technology. I think that's a nice
Yeah.
part of the
I mean, let's
technology.
face it, even if you had to have
Even
a
if
little
you-
gas tank
yeah, sure.
to start the thing up, and you
Sure.
ran 80% on hydrogen and 20% on
Sure.
gasoline, the
There's
world
a
would
lot
be
of
better off.
things in here. I think he's going for the moon. When I know that he can have the Earth in
Well-
a sense of having a non-polluting, limited perhaps. I don't know how limited. That's my question. From the way it looks at the moment, it's a limited range
yeah,
because of the energy input. But he's saying it isn't. It's a
Yeah.
limited energy.
yeah.
But he doesn't seem willing to.
Well,
Physically demonstrate.
there's a lot of things that he'll tell you, and a lot of things that he'll show you, and a lot of things that I would be able to say if we were in the lab.
Even if you had a little gasoline engine that only ran to charge the battery.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, only that, I mean, it would.
Yeah.
You've got to work out all the figures of these.
Yeah,
And,
well,
and
here-
I
well,
appreciate
I
the
can-
reluctance. I know.
Well, I
the
just,
situation.
like I say, my background is with the technology, and I've never had the background in the textbook learning that may say you can't do this because you're seeing this and you're seeing that, and you're like, oh.
A lot of
I
people,
should be
a lot of
doing
people
that.
said before that you couldn't do this, you couldn't do
Yeah,
that. I mean, it's
I
happened
don't-
a lot of times in
Sure,
in
you can't
physics.
go to the moon either.
That's right.
So,
But people have always demonstrated physically that they can do it,
sure.
rather than just say we can.
You can calculate that if you roll a
The Wright
bowling ball
brothers
against a hill
worked on
enough times,
bicycles.
it'll roll through.
Yeah, right.
But it's hard to prove.
So, I mean,
Yeah, and they
time and
had.
again, these
This
things,
is very
Yeah, the patent office wouldn't give them patents on flying machines, and they were flying. And they said, you can't fly. The patent office was telling them, you can't fly, and they had already demonstrated that they could.
or even though it should be
Yeah.
set on water.
Yeah.
You know.
So
steel,
there's
so it's kind of
there's a
safe.
lot of things, and the thing is what I tell people, and the reason I've spent a considerable time, a lot of time, and a lot of money myself pursuing this is because I don't think it's going to go away. And I believe that your question can be answered satisfactorily. I'll be the first to admit that there's a lot of red flags because it's new and it's something that you just can't be throwing everything out there in front of you every time. I mean, you invest in any stock, you invest in anything. They aren't sitting out there down at the broker's office saying, oh yeah, we got this new computer chip this week, we got this new technology that week.
But let me kind of argue because I do have a logic point.
Oh yeah, sure.
Here's what my conclusion from hearing what you say. I mean, Colin says there's enough here that it's something worth looking into. Certainly there's also enough here that it's worth looking into very cautiously because
Sure.
there are some doubts. I am willing to, I have a friend in LA who is basically his business is raising funds and you saw this thing about the TMC that we want to create. We have there's a university we have in southeast Iowa, which is a day's drive away from Columbus. So if Monty is interested, he'll talk to some of the people there, and they can go look at it or follow it. But what I'd like prior to even calling him if you could send me some letter sort of outlining what it is that you're raising
Sure.
money for, what, I mean, I don't have any, I can say, this guy, this is interesting money, why don't you go send somebody to amuse themselves?
Yeah.
And, you know, based on the feedback from that, we could act accordingly. But, I mean, I would say that I asked Colin to come because I figured he'd either say this is crazy, or gee, that's the greatest idea I've ever heard. And you said something pretty much in between, which makes sense.
You have a device, from what I see, it has a device for the controlled burning of hydrogen. I still maintain that requires a net input of energy from the outside world. How much I don't know because I don't have any figures on that. But I still think there's a net input from the outside. So you have a device for running a car on hydrogen, which is different from carrying hydrogen in a tank. And as far as that's all it is at the moment, in my mind. And that may be enough, I don't know.
Well, yeah,
you know, but
it really is. And when you, like I say, when you look into the other technologies that have been even speculated that they would run automobiles, they're all kind of processes that take large inducement of chemicals and things like that, which you have waste and a lot of maintenance and things that were just, I mean, as big as the back of a pickup truck to run a car.
there's a sharp dividing line, I think, between a device which generates hydrogen from water and burns that hydrogen to produce a non-polluting fuel source for an automobile at the expense of some energy from somewhere else. Right across that very big chasm, that's an infinitely deep chasm, in fact, is the other one of a self-running machine. And the second one I found.
It's not perpetual motion, though, in the sense that you do have to keep adding the fuel, which is the water, but it is.
But water itself is not a fuel until it's broken up.
Yeah.
So you're verging on perpetual motion.
It's a fuel one process.
Hydrogen is the fuel, not the water.
Right.
And you have to put energy in to get that hydrogen.
Yeah.
And as far as I would maintain, you have to put more in than you get out.
Yeah.
Which means that it would have, if I loaded up the car and set it on a track, it would stop after a certain amount of time. And I want to know how far it goes before it stops. It might be 2 miles, 1 mile,
Well, it could
10
even
miles,
be
something
just
like
the little bit that it takes to start it each time. You know, you'd still have that action taking place. Maybe it would take 3 million miles, but it would happen.
that. I suspect it would happen
And-
much less than
Well,
that.
yeah, I would too.
And
But
I don't know how much less. It could be 10 miles, it could be 1 mile. I think what we have is a hydrogen carburetor. That's what we have. And that would, and it has a controlled burning effect. If you had a gas tank of hydrogen on there and had a carburetor doing it, then it would work in much the same way. This is better than that. It produces hydrogen electrically and has a very nice control way of doing it, of handling it as far as the automobile is concerned. Hydrogen-powered cars are nothing new. They've been around for a long time. An onboard system for generating hydrogen and burning it may or may not be. I just don't know if anybody else has done it or not, but let's assume that it isn't. But then any system like that requires an energy input from outside. You've got to charge up that battery if you're going to do it. Otherwise the battery will go flat.
Yeah. Well, you're like say you are continually charging the system.
But you've got to charge it from outside because it's a closed system. You can't have a system
inside
a box
that's
that's
where
generating more energy than is going in.
Well, it seemed to me, from looking at it, from what I saw, there was an alternator there. There was also an electric motor
Sure.
that was generating electricity going into it.
But that's derived
Well,
from the
the
burning
electric
of the
motor-
hydrogen.
Yeah, I understand.
The electric
I
motor is
understand
basically
that, so-
plugged into the wall.
You know, I think the bottom line.
No, on the actual dune buggy
Yeah.
and that apparatus, there was more.
Well, yeah, he had that.
Oh yeah,
You know.
yeah, sure.
But what I'm saying is that's talking about consuming more energy
Yeah.
than what it would take just to run the
Yeah.
alternator.
But I think again, the bottom line that Stan and Peter have to face and convince anybody. Certainly, if I was putting money, I need to be convinced that you can get more energy out of burning hydrogen than you can put in to split the hydrogen from the water in the first place.
Right.
And that's the big $10 million doubt I have. That's what worries me. So I don't think it can be done.
And you're talking directly about the video where he showed that he turns it on and he gets this much yield and then turns the input down, but the yield keeps generating over.
Sure, you have a capacitor which eventually decays in time, but then it has to be recharged again and start it back up again. That's again energy from outside.
Right.
It's this non-reliance of outside energy, which is the real crunch issue here.
Yeah.
What time is it?
Well,
I'm not-
you know,
But, I mean, that's
5
the
to
difference
1.
between
5 to 1.
the,
We're gonna have to.
the great invention that will save mankind, or something that'll take it 80%. But I mean, even like I said, even if you have to run even if you had to run a little gasoline engine that just charged the battery to make the thing work, it'd probably be a monumental breakthrough in terms of dependence on oil and pollution and everything else. So
yeah.
I think.
But even for that, you'd want to see the figures. As
Yeah.
to how much you have
Yeah.
to, how much, what is always important for these kind of devices is output versus input, which is efficiency.
Yeah.
How much output energy do you get, and how much are you actually putting in? That has to be physically measured very carefully and monitored. And that's what Utah didn't do, of course, with their little thing.
Yeah.
They didn't do that.
Well, because of my non-physics background, I don't understand why it's not fair to say I have this amount of hydrogen. Now, if I put it in one device that happens to be able to run another device that makes enough energy to produce that hydrogen, or if I have a device that is not as efficient as this device, that can take this amount of hydrogen that was manufactured with this amount of electricity and not produce enough energy to make that. I mean, to me, it kind of boils down to the question of how efficient is the device that I'm putting the hydrogen into, not my number. It seems like once you have the hydrogen in your hand, once you have the hydrogen in your hand, then it doesn't boil down to how much energy you put in to generate that hydrogen, but what the device is you're going to put it in.
That's the next factor, but if you had a 100% device hooked on the end, if you take hydrogen, take water, split it into hydrogen, and burn the hydrogen, and then put some cooling surface to condense that into water, and measure the energy that you're getting out in terms of just heating up some, not the water you're using to generate hydrogen, just a water vessel. Just measure the thermal energy you're getting out, the flame energy. Then you can't get more flame energy out than electrical energy put in to separate the hydrogen to burn it in the first place.
Right.
That's the stumbling block.
Sure.
For
Sure. But then, like I say, it comes down to what you use that thermal energy to generate the electricity with. If you generated it with a device that was only 10%
Even if you had
efficient or
100%,
20%,
even if you had 100%, you couldn't
Still
do
lost.
it.
Yeah.
There's still
this
loss.
boils down to understanding, like say, the polarization process and the, it shows, it says, the electrical force process of the electrical polarization process allows voltage intensity. Okay, this is the difference.
These are words that I don't understand.
Yeah, well,
voltage
being a pressure, which can be set. Okay, to me, I took a little bit of electronics just so I knew what I was hearing too. And voltage being a force. Okay,
It's not a force.
to me, well,
it's not a force.
It sits. Okay, it sits. Okay, and it can be. It's a pressure. Okay,
You can consider it a pressure.
Yeah, it's a that's the term, the analogy.
Yeah.
It's like you have a
A lot
water
of water
pipe.
pressure.
Okay, you can
That's
have a
okay,
lot or a
that's
little
fine.
bit.
That's
Okay, well then by taking that voltage potential and voltage or potential or voltage
Yeah,
or
okay,
potential,
either
whichever,
one, yeah.
I'll use your
Right.
words. By taking it and
Intensify.
well, you're pulsing it. You shut it off and turn it on. Shut it off and turn it on. Shut it off and turn it on. It's there. It's there. It's there.
Yeah.
It's not. It's there. It's not.
Sure.
Right? And it doesn't create. It doesn't take energy to create that.
No, but
Okay.
by the same.
Because all you're doing is turning the power off and turning it on. And then it's there and then it's not there. It's there and it's not there. It's there and it's not
Sure,
there.
but if you were to put that power source and put a resonant cavity in the middle, what was in that resonant cavity would take energy from that voltage field.
Okay, well, then
So you've got to keep
the difference in
replenishing.
this one is that you're putting this inside of the resonant cavity. and you're using that
Which is
physical phenomenon of voltage and the polarization process, which is the part, to me, that probably consumes the energy, because you have a positive and a negative field. Okay, and by
No, you
Boreas,
don't have a positive and negative field. You have positive and negative charges
Right.
within an electric field.
okay, and
Yeah, you don't have to be. It's very awkward, and because of the terminology, whether he's deliberately written it in this way, I don't know.
and it polarizes the molecule. Say you have your voltage zone over here. You have your positive voltage zone, and it attracts a negatively charged water molecule.
Yeah,
And then you have your negatively charged voltage.
sure.
or-
That's separating hydrogen
okay.
into.
Well, and it's pulling them apart,
Right.
but it's pulling them apart efficiently, and according to physics, was
It's not-
not more
it's-
energy than it took.
It's not. It's not
to
actually.
bind them.
It's not actually dissociating the water molecules. They're being dissociated by the electrodes that are sitting in there in the first place. They're dissociating them into hydrogen and oxygen, and then you're moving them into different regions.
Well,
And that's what's happening here.
yeah, you're separating them, but the separation is a combination of the voltage being pulsed.
I get it right.
Hitting that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll get something together. I'll put something together.
And I mean, I would say there's enough that I would be willing, to pass this along to the next
Sure.
next level here, and probably some guys like Colin who live a little
Yeah,
closer are
it's
willing to
funny,
go
mine,
and ask probably the same
There's
questions.
a friend of mine who I'd be happy to. He's retired. His name is Paul Lee. I don't know if you know him. He's retired from UCSB. And he's a very nice guy. He's retired and doesn't really have much to do. He lives in Isla Vista.
All right.
And he would be the sort of guy who would look at this. He isn't going to go away and photocopy it or anything like that.
Yeah.
His wife died last week, and I'd be giving something to look at and such like this. So I'd be happy to. I'm not as negative as I sound. I think I'm playing devil's advocate
That's
as much as I
fine.
can. I think that's what.
That's fine.
That's
what
yeah,
it
sure,
should
we
be.
asked
You
to
gotta
come
have
anyway.
your questions answered in an acceptable manner to you, and
Yeah,
I've been instructed not to try to do that.
I can appreciate that.
But it's.
But if you'd like me, Peter, to let him browse through it, I'd be happy to do that.
well, what I was
it's up
gonna-
to you. I can see him first, and then
That would.
let me.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Because I was going to send these documents off. I can't copy these.
No, I
And I was
obviously
going
we don't do that
to.
either.
You may have heard of gentleman is he's the president of the International Hydrogen Association. His name is Najat Zero.
It's way
Take
better
care.
than our hour.
Take care. Thank you.
Good to talk to you.
Thanks for
Send me
coming.
something to
Thanks,
describe
bud. Very,
what you're
very
doing with it,
I'll let you
or
know.
what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
And,
for sure.
And I'll be in touch with
Yeah,
Colin.
thanks.
Colin, thanks for taking your time. I think all of it's fun is nothing else.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I've got to go back to wiring houses.
If this works, at least we'll be able to say, well, we talked to him
But
when.
let me know,
Nothing else.
Peter, if you would like Paul to Jim. Sorry, I'm calling you Peter.
Yeah. Well, I will.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'll put it together and what I'll maybe it might be easier to give him the other manual and
Whatever,
see, and get a different side of it without
yeah.
him seeing this part of it. I mean,
Yeah.
it really goes more to the polarization process, and
Yeah, he would he'd be interested. He's the same sort of guy that I am. I think he's 78.
Oh yeah.
He's retired from UCSB. He's kind of
And he right now with his wife just
he's
be great for
78.
him.
He's retired. He doesn't go into university very often. He likes to keep up with things, and he's a delightful person.
He would know how to use the system to find things.
Well, let me
Yeah.
write your number down again, and
Okay,
I'll call you
yeah.
in a couple days, and you
Okay.
get a chance to talk to him, make sure that he's
Yeah.
over his
Yeah.
morning and stuff like
569
that.
2504. Yeah. There's a machine there. So we're building a house out in Carpentry.
Yeah.
Most of my time.
Thank you for your time. Really appreciate this.
All right. Well, I've yet to have anybody. I mean, I have people that get excited and believe that everything we're happening is happening, but they don't have the physics background to make some question something that doesn't appear on the face of it that makes them wonder.
Yeah,
And
I think
to-
that's what.
To see that you can generate enough electricity with an engine of a car to generate enough hydrogen to run that car, to me, is not that great of a phenomenon, but apparently there's a hang-up in the physics department with that.
Yes, right. Yes, exactly. I think you've.
And
We're closing down the camera, gentlemen. Take care.